Caitlin Clark is playing like the best player in WNBA history right now. She's been absurd to start the season, and she put on a show against the Seattle Storm. Clark might have played her best game ever. Just her speed out on the floor is like, yo. And then she was efficient with her shooting as well. She's getting to the cup. She's diming people up. Every aspect of her game was on display in this one, and the Fever ran away with the win as Clark continues to add to her own WNBA records. But before I get to the highlights of it and the records and all that, I want to address a couple things that I've seen quite a bit online that are frankly ridiculous. And I want to do it as like a PSA, right? Like I'm not better than anybody. Differing opinions are welcome, all that stuff. But please don't buy into some of the nonsense that's out there. Number one, it is fair to criticize head coach Stephanie White if you find a problem with what she's doing, if you have an issue with any of her coaching. That's par for the course. That's the game. That's the way it works. All good, right? But she is not sabotaging Caitlin Clark or trying to hold Caitlin Clark back. That is an absurd notion. It is deranged. Anybody that's telling you that, throw it in the garbage. Also, on top of that, the rotation questions have come up. And I put this out online, and I wasn't trying to be condescending to people because you can disagree with Stephanie White's rotations as well, or the timing of them or whatnot. But Caitlin Clark ain't going to play the entire game every game. And that's to manage her minutes. That's to keep her healthy over the course of the season. And she's going to be subbed out, generally, for stars, it's towards the end of the first quarter into the second quarter. You repeat that third and fourth. And this one, she came out a little bit earlier in the first. And it seemed like Stephanie White was staggering her minutes along with Kelsey Mitchell so that one of them's on the floor at all times. But that is normal. That is regular. The game the other day when she was out off the floor, like that wasn't a high leverage game. It was the first quarter of the third game of the season against the Washington Mystics. Now, if you thought she should have come back in earlier, fine, okay, whatever. But like it's normal basketball rotations for her to sit down. When I have a critique, I will state it, of course. And to me, my biggest issue right now is the evasiveness around the injuries. Before the game, Aaliyah Boston was out for this one. And Stephanie White, once again, said, didn't answer what the nature of the injury was and deferred it, punted it to the medical staff. I just wish they were a little bit more transparent. It was reported by Scott Agnes that Boston had a meniscus injury. That was the unrivaled injury. We don't know specifically if this is related, but given the way Stephanie White said she was going to manage AB, I have to imagine it is. But I wish there was a little bit more transparency there. On to the highlights from the CC show and from the rest of the Fever. The Fever put it out nicely for me here, a collection of the highlights on social media. Clark, behind the back, crossover, great find to Billings. Just beautiful. Then you have this play here. Cross half court. Oh, I'm just going to pull from here. Cash. From way outside. Bench celebrates. Caitlin crossover again. Whew, look how quick she is. Takes the contact, finishes, flexes, strong, and one. Looked like Connor McCaffrey was happy about that one. So, those are some of the highlights. And CC, comes out with, I think, 8 minutes left in the game, and she still had 21 points and 10 assists, which is a record, by the way. She has the most 20-point and 10 assist games in WNBA history, the most ever. And you see this in 57 games. Courtney Vandersloot, 436 games. Diana Taurasi, 565 games. Clark ahead of all of them. And on top of that, she got 2 assists credited back to her from the other night. So she has the record for 30-point and 10 assist games too. I mean, the records are going to be, a record for records at a certain point. Now, the rest of the rotation was interesting, and the rest of the play from the Fever is worth getting into as well. Lexi Hull entered the starting lineup. I always thought she was going to be the starter. The hamstring had kept her out. Sophie Cunningham actually played her best game off the bench, played more minutes than Hull. Part of that's the blowout. but 17 points for Sophie off the bench. Lexi Hull with 9 points in her 19 minutes, but she helps the defense. She's a better defender. Monique Billings was fine for the Fever today. Maisha Hines-Allen, shout out to her. She's going to be big, especially when AB's out, but I think she's going to be big as sort of like the Swiss Army knife in the front court all season. She had a really good game. You can see she was plus 16 in her minutes. Michaela Timpson came off the bench before Damiris Dantas. That is notable. It's notable. And they're going to need her all year long. They're going to need her, particularly when Boston is out. Then Raven Johnson also came off before Ty Harris in this one, but didn't play particularly great. Nonetheless, worth noting those quick rotation shifts for the Indiana Fever in this one. Now, the Fever made it clear afterwards they still didn't think their defense was good enough. Clark said that. Kelsey Mitchell said that. This is a depleted Seattle Storm team they were playing. They were led by Natisha Heidemann and Flau'jae Johnson in the scoring column, but definitely a decimated Storm front court with McBeggar out and Dominique Malanga out with the concussion. So the Fever are going to have much greater tests down the road than this one. They have a few days off before they play again, and they get Portland, I believe, next. So they get an expansion team, which is good for the Fever's win-loss record. And that's the other thing about, like, we are so early in the season. You can't like have wild overreaction. Some of the stuff is just deranged, and then some of like the wild negative overreactions, I get people pushing back on me. I'm going to wait till I know what I really think about things, knowing how long a season is. Knowing, we're going to get different data points, we're going to get different games, different results. Like Sue Bird said before the game, the big thing for the Fever is injuries. If they stay healthy, they're going to figure the rest out. And I firmly believe that as well. It's why not going overboard over a loss to the Washington Mystics that the Fever obviously could have won. And even, some of the personnel things, we'll see how they wind up as the season goes along. So like I said, critiques are fine. And I hope when I bring the real critiques, they mean more, because I'm trying to be rational is the word I'm looking for. But for any questions about how Clark is going to play under the head coach, well, Clark is playing better than she ever has before. This is the best version of Caitlin Clark that we've ever seen. And it's happening under the tutelage of head coach Stephanie White. So how's that for a conspiracy? Is that what it is? Or she went rogue. She's doing it by herself. Finally, CC, go. Regardless, the Fever get a win, and Caitlin Clark is just fun to watch. I don't think anybody can argue with that.